Hello everyone and welcome to my review for Kengan Omega Chapter 139. Before I get into this week's review, I of course have to mention that we are only 64 subscribers away from our subscriber goal for 2021 hitting 4,000 by the end of the year. So if you're watching this and you haven't already, definitely be sure to hit that subscribe button. Every single one of you counts and helps us get a little bit closer to our goal. So with that out of the way, let's get on with the review. So there are a few important bits to talk about in this chapter. A few of the more minor ones are covered in very quick succession, kind of in like the first, 5 or 6 pages of the chapter. First one, Tarashi gets to Nicholas, and we find out that Nicholas, or Jean, or both, is not in a very good mental state right now, because he thinks now that he is both Nicholas and Jean at the same time. Or alternatively, that there are two of them. He's fucked up. He's really in a terrible mental state right now. It's kind of depressing. And even Tarashi takes pity on him. And in an absolutely unprecedented move, Tarashi decides to spare Nicholas. He says that he got the wrong person. His target is Nicholas LeBanner. So he tells Jean to take care. And he leaves. So, somehow, after that miserable performance in his fight with Okubo, Tarashi stocks her back up, because that was a really nice character moment right there. Goes to show Tarashi's a professional, he has standards, he has some degree of morality, he's not gonna murder someone who is losing their mind. Like, Nicholas has no idea who the fuck he is right now. Tarashi's not going to kill a guy like that, so he leaves. I can't believe I'm saying this, but hopefully we see him again. And hopefully we see Nicholas again. I hope he gets better. This is a really depressing state for him to end up in. Next one we check in very quickly on is Akoya, who's thinking about how he was not strong enough to enact justice, and he needs to get stronger. So, maybe some kind of Akoya training arc in the future. And then we go over to the most amusing part of this chapter. Jiaji is running away from some guys that he says are monsters. Presumably, the people he was running away from were Eddie and Ryan, because that's where he was when that started. But then he runs into the last people on Earth he would want to run into, which is Joji and Kureishi. And Kureishi very casually dislocates Jiaji's wrist. And it hurts a lot, as you would imagine. Limb dislocation is not pleasant. It hurts so much that he thinks he broke it. But no. He only dislocated it. He'll know when Kureishi breaks it. And Kureishi makes a very interesting face. So, I haven't personally read Fist of the Seeker, but I know about a decent amount of the information that's from there. Mostly because Joji and Kureishi are Fist of the Seeker characters, and I wanted to know more about them. Joji is one of the strongest people in the building. I think it's a competition between him and Kuroki to see which of them is in the top 3 strongest people in the building right now. Now, Kureishi is an extremely powerful MMA practitioner, but his most notable feature is the fact that he has a fetish for bone breaking. So, assuming that we're in for a Jiaji torture session, I assume that at some point we're gonna see Kureishi fucking pop a chub. It's been a while since we've seen someone pitch a tent in Kengan, so that should be, something. I don't know what, but, something. Oh, and I guess Joji's also going to be kicking the shit out of Jia, so, it's just Jiaji bullying hours up in here. Anyway, time to get on to the main attraction of this week's chapter, but before I do that, I of course have to give a shout out to my wonderful patrons. Special thanks to Neo, Dijon Redden, Anthony Chavez, Honey Mustard, K-God, Chris Redfield, Scratch23, Rat, Ryzen 4K, Artist, Mac Campaign, Wave of Manga, Chuck Speed and Seed, Jakester Easy, Play Free Labs, and Emerald. Thank you all very much for supporting me on Patreon. I greatly appreciate it. And if you too want to get a shout out at some point during videos, or access to reviews for Solo Leveling and the Boxer, you can always become a patron as well. There's a link to my Patreon down in the description. So, Eddie versus Ryan. The first part of this fight is off screen, and it kind of makes sense considering how much time has passed since the fight seemingly started. Eddie beat the shit out of Ryan. We don't know exactly what happened. We don't know if he had help from his other buddies here, but the impression I got was that Eddie beat up Ryan, and then the other parts of him showed up. The other Hui Shang recipients arrived after the fact. And Eddie makes a note of how Ryan's really not a good assassin, because he just tried to fight him head on as opposed to just trying to kill him. Like, just kill him from behind or something. Like, he probably could have done that. So he's kind of shit at being an assassin. And it seems like, at the very least, base Ryan cannot really compete that well with base Edward. Now, presumably, Ryan in removal is able to fight Edward, at least in base form, but we do not see Edward use removal or Goihun during this chapter. And I do think that's interesting, because we do see the other Hui Sheng recipients use it. Solomon and Fabio. These guys are also the connections to Wu Hei. So it seems like Edward, as the current head of the Westward faction, is the guy who is imprinting himself onto other people. So Alan was one of the recipients, Solomon, Fabio, their recipients, and then there is apparently a fifth person who we do not know about, and the fact that they are brought up at all and have like a silhouette that we don't see suggests that they are going to be significant at some point in the future. And having all of these spares makes sense, of course, because, as pointed out, like when Alan got killed, what happens if a Wu Hei's connector dies when he's like the current Wu Hei, the current head of the Westward faction, or the Wu, is in like his fucking 90s or something, and then the guy that he was imprinting his personality onto croaks. Well, shit. Looks like Wu Hei is fucked. So you gotta have extras, you gotta have backups. You can't turn everyone into Wu Hei, because Wu Hei is kind of an asshole and likes being in charge, so the clan would end up eating itself. So you gotta keep it to like a select few amount of people. Now, I don't think these other guys are particularly anywhere near as strong as Edward. They're just recipients of the personality. Like, Alan is clearly not going to be anywhere near as strong as Edward's going to be. Solomon says that Alan was the weakest member of their group. I think some people misinterpreted it as him saying that Alan was the weakest member of the Westward faction. No, when he says us, he's referring to them as Wu Hei. And by the way, we get another interesting piece of information. They all refer to each other by their birth names, just because it's way less confusing than them all calling each other Wu Hei. You'd have like a Nicholas situation or something. So they basically use their birth names as designations, but they're all technically the same person. They're all one guy inhabiting multiple bodies, so they all work together. And we see that as they all tag team Ryan with scumfuck tactics. And even Edward's like, yeah, this is kind of bitch moves. However, I don't care. Why should I give a shit about being honorable or something? I'm here to kick your ass. It doesn't matter if I do that fairly or not. We're gonna fight you unfairly, 3-on-1. Now, Fabio and Solomon use Goihun after Ryan goes into removal. Edward does not. And that's probably because, in the current situation, Edward doesn't really feel the need to use Goihun. Because his normal state is sufficient. Yeah, so Edward, very strong. Edward is in the top 3 strongest people in the building, probably. we're gonna see how powerful. I think Edward is probably gonna be someone that rivals Tiger Nico. That comment's either gonna age really well or just it's gonna age like milk. I don't know how long it's gonna take for that to happen. In fact, I'm getting a feeling that that comment's not gonna age well, but we're just gonna have to wait and find out. Now, at the end of the chapter, the 3v1 turns into a 2v2 because Aereo shows up and does what an assassin is supposed to do, stabs Fabio in the back with a sword. So he's here to join the fight. So Aereo, who's like fucking 100 years old or something, is going to join in with this fight with Edward and Solomon. Now, I feel like we're probably going to maybe have them switching between who they'll be fighting during the battle, but I definitely see having the head of the Kure clan fight the head of the Westward faction. That just seems to make sense. And then, you know, have Ryan fight Solomon, who is kind of like an inheritor. He would be like an inheritor to Edward. And then Ryan probably kills Solomon, and I'm pretty sure Aereo dies during this fight. I'm pretty sure Aereo is going to be part of this tragedy that's supposedly going to happen. I mean, like, listen, Ryan dying would not be a tragedy by any stretch of the imagination, but the head of the Kure clan, who's generally kind of a cool guy, dying, that would be a component to a tragedy. I can definitely see Edward straight up killing him, but there's also the possibility that the head of the Wu clan betrays the Kure. I don't know how likely that is, because we know that the Westward faction doesn't really get along with them either. So, I personally find it more likely that Eddie just straight up kills Aereo during their fight. Now, never underestimate old men in anime, but Kengan definitely seems like the series, in terms of like Aereo's case, where getting older definitely has like some kind of impact on your performance. If you're past your prime, and you're not like Kuroki or something. Like Kuroki is past his physical prime, but he just keeps practicing martial arts. Aereo has shrunk. He's like half of his size from when he was the Fang of Metsudo. I do think Aereo is probably noticeably weaker than when he was the Fang. But we're just gonna have to see how powerful he is now in the present. He has a weapon. We don't see armed combat that often in Kengan, so that should be pretty cool. And we're gonna see how that stacks up against Edward, who is the last member of the evil trio from the end of Ashura, who has either not been turned into a bitch or has straight up died. So let's hope he lives up to the hype, everyone. Seriously, let's really hope he lives up to the hype. Edward is one of the last really exciting things that we have in Omega right now, for the time being. Other than, you know, Joji and Kureishi potentially having a fight with Tiger Nico. So let's hope that it ends up being good. But yeah, with that, that's all I've got to say for this week's review. If you enjoyed, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you don't miss any of my uploads. I do Kengan Omega chapter reactions and reviews every week. If you enjoy discussing Kengan Omega with other people, or you just enjoy the content I produce on this channel, I highly suggest you check out my Discord server. I have a link to that down in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys around. Take care.